We declare that the spirit of the independent Asian documentary filmmakers is alive, and one day it will soar with the wind.
Okay, everyone ready? Can we start?
Okay.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to the online talk session. What the value of dialogue with audience on unfinished films? Made in Japan, Yamagata 1989-2021 online program. My name is Hama Haruka from the Yamagata International Documentary Film Festival. Today, we will discuss past editions of YIDFF's Yamagata Rough Cut with coordinators of this program, Sakai Ko and Watanabe Kazutaka, with Philip Cheah from Singapore. And we'd like to introduce our idea and share the concept of this program, Yamagata Rough Cut. It's not a big program. We only showed 4 or 6 projects each time, but the dialogue through the process of Yamagata Rough Cut program is a very special experience to share with participants besides other screening programs in the festival. Yamagata Rough Cut started in 2013. Rough Cut means an ongoing piece of work. In this program, we are showing unfinished pieces of work with people come to the festival around the world, filmmakers, audiences, critics, researchers, everyone. Several elements caused the launch of this program, but the main aim was to provide a place to watch, feel, talk, and listen to a range of unfinished films. Not judging the work in progress footage like fundraising pitches or production coaching. So then since 2015, Sakai Ko joined as a coordinator of Yamagata Rough Cut, and also he showed his co-directed film Storytellers as well in Yamagata 2013. That film is in the online program. Made in Japan, Yamagata 1989-2021 this time. So at the beginning, we invited filmmakers based only in Japan, but we started to call for projects from Asia in 2017, and film producer Watanabe-san joined as a coordinator too. And that year, Sakai-san asked me to invite an Asian film expert as a supervisor because they needed someone familiar with the background of Asian documentaries and cinema. Then we called film critic and programmer Philip Cheah and to come to Yamagata. That's all for a very rough introduction of Yamagata Rough Cut program and all of you here. So with this opportunity, it would be great if we can share some essays how unique and important this program. So at first, Sakai-san, can you tell us the concept of Yamagata Rough Cut program in more detail?
Yamagata Rough Cut のコーディネーター。
I am a coordinator of Yamagata Rough Cut. My name is Sakai.
2015年、13年から。
It was since 2013 that this program started at YIDFF, and I joined in 2015. And I'd like to tell you the concept of why we came about with this program. First of all, this program is about showing unfinished films within the film festival program. Oftentimes in film festivals, you get a so-called pitching forum for filmmakers who are trying to gather money or funding for a film in production. Where distribution support or funders will be gathered together and you'll be pitching your project to these people. But in our case, we are not doing that. We want to purely show the creative form of that film and show it to the audience, to the general public, and to other filmmakers. And that's what I started to do in 2015 and 2013. The reason we started that was because 2 years before it began, it was 2011. That was where a huge tragedy, a natural disaster happened in Japan. And all sorts of ideas came about within the film festival program. When a very huge disaster happens in our lives, how can we get to know about it? Oftentimes we learn about this disaster through films or visual images, but those visual images are often edited, and you can only judge or decide on what that happened through edited footage. And I think that the filmmakers themselves and also audiences were a little bit unstable, unsure about judging upon that. And so the idea was to try to start a conversation about that footage and to alleviate that uncertainty. And that program continued on until this day. 2011 was another year where many platforms for online distribution began in Japan, especially like Ustream or these kind of platforms. And the environment for people, there was an emotion that emerged among people that wanted to watch films that were not finished, that were rough, that were original. And for this edition, you can see that we are using this online media. And it's often that we overlook what is outside of the screen or outside of this online media. I thought that it's very important to try to develop the imagination of imagining beyond the screen, imagining beyond what we see. For example, in the film festival, there are many films, but there are many films that are not shown in the film festival. There's a lot of visual image that is outside the selection of a film festival or the films that are winning prizes in film festivals. So I think that the Rough Cut program is trying to gear our eyes towards those kind of things that are outside of what we see in front of, presented in front of us, and try to train our imagination.
Let's go on, and then I like to ask Watanabe-san, and can you share with us your first experience of Yamagata Rough Cut first time in 2017?
Thank you for having me. I'm Kazutaka Watanabe, film producer in Japan, also a coordinator. I'm coordinating together with Ko Sakai-san since 2017. The third edition of the Yamagata Rough Cut. As Sakai-san explained, he's really explaining the detail of the ideas of rough cuts. But at the timing when I joined this rough cut pro coordination team, I didn't know really much about the rough cut itself. So I just got the phone call from Hama-san, and then I heard that the program was going to expand the projects. They are accepting the project from Asian countries, and then I was expected to coordinate those between the filmmakers from Asia. And me as a producer, I was always interested in those unfinished works, and I myself is always working on those unfinished works, and I want to get to know more about the new talents in Asia. That's why I was kind of interested in it, and then I joined it. And after joining that, I of course met Philip Cheah and Sakai and everyone, and that was kind of amazed with the events. This Yamagata Rough Cut itself is not just a screening. After joining that, I got to know that what Sakai-san just said, like accepting the footage itself, and then using your imagination beyond what's happening in the screen. This 2 points, this Yamagata Rough Cuts is expecting all the audience to do so. And in 2017, we had an graffiti documentation with Natsumi Seo-san was doing the documentation, but the audience was picked by Sakai-san, the facilitator, and he asks the audience that what they felt or what they think, how they felt or what they thought after watching the 15 minutes rough cut. And then all the imagination or all the words or terms or maybe ideas will be spoken by the audience. And then everything was again jot down in the whiteboard. And then everyone reads the whiteboard, and I was translating those words in the whiteboard from Japanese to English. So I was covering all those spoken words and comments made by the audience. And each time the audience spoke out in front of the audience, Sakai-san accept all the comments and then give out the comments and then give the ideas back to the audience. And he never let the audience speak to other audience directly. So all the comments were spoken to Sakai-san, and through Sakai-san, it was shared to the audience, and it was all the ideas were jotted down in a whiteboard. And so only Sakai-san and me and Seo-san, these three were looking at, we were against the audience, and all the audience was looking at us. And there, I felt like that was my first experience to experience the audience and ideas shared in like entire, how to say, it was like this like 40, I think there were like over 40 audience, like sharing one huge brain together at the same time. And the beginning of those imagination starts from one footage. And after observing the footage, we share the ideas, and this kind of dialogue goes on like over 2 hours or 2.5 hours for each project. And that was kind of amazing. Like, of course, as a film producer, I believe in the values of film or footage itself. So that's why I'm working on this like all the projects that I'm involved. But it was a kind of interesting experience to see the value itself staying in the atmosphere by this rough cut program. It was not only just by screening, but with the help of Sakai-san, with the help of audience and those documentation, we create the atmosphere. And in that timing, I felt like the filmmakers that participated in this rough cut felt a lot of things, because out of the project, after the footage that they made, all the comments and ideas was spread around in the room. And of course, the audience could get something out of the dialogue. And me, myself, as a coordinator, received a lot of things. That was quite an experience for me. And that was 2017 rough cut, Yamagata rough cut that I remember. Thank you.
Thank you. very interesting. And how about Philip? You also are there first time in 2017, and what is your experience there? Can you share with us?
Well, Ko Sakai and Kazutaka
Mhm.
told me if I would follow them to the rough cuts, they would treat me to an Ogawa Shinsuke secret curry recipe lunch. So, you know, secret curry, I'm on. I'll follow you. So I went there, and I didn't realize that it was going to be 2.5 hours till lunch, and okay, it's not so bad really. After a while, it's very quiet. You know, everyone is listening to each other. You have the filmmakers, about 6 of them, I think, talking about their footage, and then you have all this, the audience, the 40 members of the audience talking, but the emphasis is on listening. So, you know, a lot of people talk about watching films, and I think we've lost the art of listening to film. And the rough cut experience to me that suspended my hunger was that we were actually listening to film. And if you've seen Ko Sakai's film Storytellers,
Mhm.
during that experience in rough cut, you actually inside that film. Ko Sakai is again listening to the storytellers, and in this case, not only the 6 filmmakers were the storytellers, but we, the audience, were also part of the storytelling. And finally, the curry was really very good. It was worth it.
Ogawa Shinsuke curry.
Yeah. It was kind of a special recipe during the festival, I remember.
Yeah, I remember. Yeah, that eating curry with Philip's son. The coincidence, I
Mhm.
think it was, but it was served in the same building
Yeah.
that we screened the rough cut program. Yeah, yeah. But we don't have that now, right? I think.
The
Yes.
venue was still there, but they are not so active now.
So we cannot eat the curry again at the same place.
You can try.
とてもレアなケースでしたね。いや、よか
Right.
った。
Yeah.
That was
So-
good.
That was good. Yes, I remember that that Philipson made a comment. After the session, we always ask Philipson to give us a comment as a supervisor. You said to the audience that after this dialogue session, everyone knew that all the footage like a wine. Like you can see the layers, but if you don't know about the layer, then you cannot tell. But after you see the layers, you can appreciate the layers. And here there are filmmakers participating in the same room. So if you want to come up and show up and talk to them, you can know more about layers, or you can maybe share your ideas. That really moved me a lot too. Yeah. And that way I think was part of the rough cut concept too.
So I'm gonna riff on the curry metaphor, and that the rough cut to me is part of this whole trend of slow food. I mean, you heard the term, right? Slow food, and you've also heard the term mindful eating. And you know, this has been a sort of a recent development because people have realized that they're rushing through everything. They're living life too fast, and they need to sort of stop and experience life again. And I think that's the beauty of rough cut, because you know, for me as a programmer, when I go to festivals, I remember that year in Yamagata when they were doing the sort of the prototype rough cut with living on the River Agano, and they wanted this experience of people talking about the film. And I looked at the program and I thought I wouldn't go for this one, you know, because I have to watch all the other new films. So you know, I didn't make time for that. And in a way, that's what we're all going through. We're all rushing through stuff, and we stop being in the experience of just enjoying a film for what it is. And I think Rough Cut to me brought me in touch with my feelings about being with the film again.
I think I remember in 2017 we showed like 50 minutes footages, and then we went on a dialogue for like 30 or 40 minutes, and then we had a small break, and then we screened another footage for 50 minutes, and then did the discussion or dialogue for 30-40 minutes, and then after that we had like we came up with the key question coming up from those dialogues in both footage, and then we went more deeper for 40 minutes, and altogether it was like 4 hours. That's really like appreciating footage and project. Yeah.
で4時間のセッションが3回か。
There were 3 sessions of 4 hours,
それに全部
right?
フィリップも
And Philip, yeah, hung
なんかその
around
ワインの話が出た
for
時
the
に
whole
あ
thing.
もう
So
フィリップ飲
when
み
he
たいの
started talking about wine, I thought,
あ
wow,
の
he's
その後の
probably
実は飲み
very
会も用意して
thirsty by now.
そのみんなこう
We had a
タフな
party,
ディスカッションの場になるの
prepared
で
before
そ
that
の後ちゃんと
discussion,
飲み
very
会
tough
用意してこ
discussion.
こで
So
はみんな
we
手
were
を出した人はタダ
prepared
で飲める
to
っていう
have
のを
all
用意し
the
て
audience and
そし
the
たらフィリップ
participants
が
be able to
ワイン
drink
の
for
話を
free.
持ってきてくれたん
But
でカレー
then
も騙して
Philip
もう
talked about
カレ
wine,
ー
and
食べれ
he
るか
also
らっていう
talked about
ことを実
curry.
は
And
忘れてい
you know,
て
I
ですね
had
あそうだ
actually forgotten until now that we had invited you to the curry. I'm kind of amazed at that.
It was unforgettable.
Yeah, Yamagata is there's a lot of good foods in Yamagata. So not only curry, but yeah.
Yeah, so our memory
Mm.
connected with food and the taste of Yamagata in film.
But actually, I'm quite curious about the Rough Cut experience because I see it also as an extension of Ko Sakai's own personality. You know, and you know, I'm curious to ask Ko Sakai about how he sort of developed this approach to listening to film, because you know, Storytellers is so much what I experienced in Rough Cut, you know.
Thank you.
その2011年にその
In 2011, when I went to Yamagata Film Festival and I showed a film called The Sound of the Waves. And then in 2013, I showed 2 other films, the Storytellers and one more film.
一番初め僕らもその震災起きた後に
But when we were making these films
まあもちろん
after the earthquake, I know that the earthquake was in Tokyo too, but for us in Sendai, the tsunami was something that we saw in visual images. And I remember how anxious those images made me feel, this tsunami, to be able to know about what's happening right now, but immediately, like to be able to experience that through films. It's as if we understood the experience, but not really, you know. And then we went actually to the site after having seen the visuals. And of course, when I went there, it's not that we could understand it too, but when I came to the Northeast after I was an adult, you know, to have to be able to imagine something that has disappeared. I mean, I could only hear about what existed in that place before I was there through the voices of people or conversing with people who remember that. So it was a very lucky experience for me to be able to do that project. Ono Kazuko is the lady who's doing the story collecting in Storytellers. She had always consistently been in touch with these storytellers of folk tales. And so the idea or the event that she organized was to ask them, these folk tale storytellers, to tell us about their stories of the disaster, and we were invited to record that event. It was a very exciting idea and stimulating idea for these folk tale tellers to be telling us about their own experiences. But we were also surprised and inspired by Ono-san and how her relationship with the people when they met Ono-san again, they seemed to be really reassured and so happy to see her. It was as if the act of listening really gave people some power or strength. In order for people to speak or to talk, tell stories, they need a listener. And so the relationship is mutual. There has to be a listener in order for the act of speaking to happen. And so in the course of our filmmaking, we decided that to make these 3 films, I mean, including Storytellers, The Sound of the Waves, etc. This filmmaking style came out from our discovery of Ono Kazuko's style of listening. So Storyteller is exactly as you say, that kind of film. So we were filming the storyteller, but at the same time, the story listener in the same equal balance. And I think it was not just my idea, but also the other coordinators of a Rough Cut program at the time, the concept of listening and talking to be equal to each other. Philip, you just talked about how we should stand still and slow down. I think that in 2011, that was, or 2013, that was what we were trying to do. When there's so much information hitting us hard and we had to drown in that information, we wanted to slow down and gear our direction towards something more simple or more understandable. Perhaps it was kind of a movement. Maybe I'm exaggerating to say that it was kind of a movement.
Yeah, and I remember that in 2017, we also showed the footage to the local high school students. We called the Youth Rough Cut program. Yeah, and of course, in the Rough Cut program, there were some small numbers, but the local people, not only filmmakers, but the film festival related people, staffs too. So various people. So what we are discussing now really means a lot to not only the filmmakers, not only the festival related staffs, but to high schools and ordinary people too. And this is why I after experiencing this Rough Cut program, I myself started my own workshop to show the small footage to the local people, the neighbors around me, and then talk about what we remember about the thing that we saw, and that really helps the people to use their own imagination and really slowly learn and take in the 15-minute footage in their mind, and that really stop their their ordinary daily life. They really appreciated those experiences, and even one of them told me thank you for listening to my idea. After watching the film, and then they were letting go of their ideas, but they appreciate to be listened. And that was kind of interesting for me. I was not going to do any kind of therapy for him, but that just happened. So this Rough Cut concept itself is it really, I feel like it means a lot for many people in the society. Yeah.
And in 2017, in the audition, then the Henny, the other sessions guest of this I Made in Japan program,
Yes.
she was also participated as a she had a project and then she joined us, right? Would
In
you
a
like
rough
to
cut.
would you like to say something about that experience or?
そう、ヘニマを来てくれて、もう
Yes, Henny, the Indonesian filmmaker, came and joined us.
企画自体が小さな企画なんですね。
This is a very small program within the festival, you know, Rough Cut.
その中で、まあ、ヘニ、僕もそこで初めて会ったんですけど。
And I
彼女は
met Henny for the first time when she
地元
come and
イン
joined
ドネシア
us
で映画祭の
for this
プログラ
program.
ムをやっ
But
たり、彼女
she's actually in Indonesia. She's a filmmaker, but also runs a film program back in Indonesia. She's very experienced in the field. And it was very beneficial for us to have her join us. I heard that she had a good impression of the program. Because Rough Cut is a little bit of a contradiction, I think, in concept. The program doesn't push you back, the filmmaker. I mean, the film isn't moving towards or progressing towards completion. Actually, it's regressing because the discussion really goes into, you know, well, why did you want to make this film, etc. I mean, to the origins of the filmmaking, and it doesn't go to the completion of the film. So that kind of contradiction maybe will be uncomfortable for people who are wanting to move their film forward. I was a little bit unsure how the filmmaker would react to that experience, but I found that Henny is a very smart and sensitive filmmaker who was able to be a good recipient to the program, what the program offered.
So we expect someday that she complete the film and come back to the Yamagata Documentary Film Festival.
Yeah.
And in our past in couple editions, we have already introduced like 23 projects, and some of them came back to the festival, and that was really wonderful to know. And yeah, of course, many are still struggling, but Sakai-san just said that the program itself doesn't really like push the project to the completion. We understand that, and everyone understands that now. But we still we pray for them to like complete sometime in the future and come back to Yamagata. Yeah, that's also like yeah, very interesting when we meet each other again in the festival.
そうですね。本当に僕も願ってます。完成を。
Yeah, I do hope so too that these filmmakers finish their films.
としてこうとあれで。
I know that the project is strong, but we want to see the finished film.
Yeah. Also, the Odoriko, the film that was screened last year was a former Yamagata Rough Cut participants. Yeah.
Last year, in 2019.
Ah, okay. 2019. Sorry.
It's okay. Yeah. Okay.
そうですね。いや、本当にラフカットがこんな映画になるのかと。
Yes, I was surprised that that rough cut that we saw was completed into that film called Nuded Heart. It was shown in 2021 in YIDFF International Competition.
Then,
Yeah. Well, so I want to ask more about what's so different between those the programs in other festivals. There are many like work in progress programs in other festivals, but the Yamagata Rough Cut is a little different. That Philip-san already told us, but could you explain more about that?
Well, I guess the thing about most other festivals is that all these pitch projects are very transactional, meaning that you're always circling around the economics of a film. So people are there because they want to get money, they want to get post-production funding, they want to get something. So, which means that the whole notion of the pitch is that you're there trying to sell something. You go up there on stage and you talk about your project for about 10 or 15 minutes. Then maybe you show also some clips from your work. But all the time it's like a factory conveyor belt, and you're just moving along. There's a jury of a pitch jury, maybe 6 people, and they're listening to you, but you don't really get more than one time to make your pitch. So everything goes into that one moment. So I would say that the listening aspect is very fast. It just has to go very fast. So I would say that rough cut is the most unique thing that I've seen in a festival situation, because I don't see it anywhere else. It's what I call a very philosophical way of approaching cinema. In a very simple way, to people who haven't experienced rough cut, it's like going into maybe Zen meditation. You just go there, and you're being quiet with the film, with the images, and you're being quiet with listening to your own thoughts, and as well as other people. So the listening is very focused, because all the time you're not only listening to other people, but you're also listening to your own thoughts. And most of the time when we watch films these days, we're not even aware of what we're thinking about. We don't think about what we're thinking about. But in the rough cut situation, you do experience all of that very acutely. So I'd say this is a really unique program in the world of film festivals. This would be loved by all the Buddhist festivals in the world.
I hope so. Yeah. I remember when the Ko Sakai, the facilitator, is pretty unique. I think everyone could get the image after this conversation. But I remember, like, not some footage can like hurt someone, right? Someone could be hurted, and then someone could show their hatred or like any kind of anger to the audience, and sometimes that happens. Someone sometimes criticize the footage or project, but every time that happens, like Sakai-san just like say the opposite, like give the audience an other aspect, or he used any kind of by any means he take away this kind of poison out of the comments, and then give it back to the audience in a very neutral way. So it's pretty really like maybe Zen or Buddhism that you say. And if we continue doing that, then our feelings or emotion, like very like negative feelings, disappears, and then we just share some. We don't say it's a positive, but we just share some kind of ideas. This came through the mind by watching films and listening to the conversation. Yeah, that was very. Yeah, I remember that. Yeah.
I don't know if you can do rough cut on Die Hard 2.
Maybe.
先にフィリップのお話に答えると、
First of all, I'll respond to you, Philip. For Die Hard, I think we can do it. We can do rough cut with Die Hard. Because rough cut is about showing unfinished footage, but it's also an act of understanding that footage to be unfinished. That the footage that we're watching is unpolished, it's unfinished, it's in progress. And it's the only part of footage that we can learn about this film. So when we come to that perspective, all films can be looked at as a rough cut. Of course, some are easier to do than others, but I think, Philip, you said something really important that I had been forgetting for a while. The fact is, we ourselves are being what we think ourselves is most important. And this is something that I talk to the audience about before the sessions. Usually I say very strongly that this is not a place to criticize, and it's not a place for you to point out what is not done or what is not perfect. And I ask people to be more rational and reasonable about voicing those kind of opinions. And along the way, some people are confused or not necessarily following up. But when we did the youth rough cut session with the high school children, the director who showed his or her rough cut to the students said, please criticize this footage. You can say that you didn't understand this part, or you don't like this part, or please show us your emotions. Show me your emotions simply. And when I heard that from the filmmaker, I thought, oh, maybe I was being too much common sense or trying to control too much. And so since then, I've been more open to criticism. But the issue of criticism always goes back to yourself. It's about what you are thinking. Are you? That's why I decided as a facilitator to take on the opinion of the speaker and then facilitate that and bring it out, or else that place of discussion will become a very unproductive place. It could become a risky and a dangerous place for the filmmaker who presented their film. So I've been always thinking that I want to keep reason and a rational attitude when making this place, the rough cut space happen. But happily, we have not had a dangerous or bad experience in rough cut up until now. It has to do perhaps with the film festival atmosphere, but I feel that the audience is always there with a sense of moderation and reason.
That was the next edition, the 2019, that someone criticized one film. 覚えてます？酒井さん。
覚えてますね。
Yes, I remember. I think it was very uncomfortable. It's very unpleasant. Or no, the audience said that it was an unpleasant experience to watch the film. But that word unpleasant, that participant, spoke those words understanding what was supposed to be said there. I mean, saying something uncomfortable, speaking about one's uncomfortable feelings in that kind of a situation is not so easy, and so it's not so common for these kind of negative emotions to come out in a public space. Usually, or Philip, you mentioned that there was a silence in the room, but sometimes, people are just chewing on that moment or the thoughts or the spoken word. And so we are kind of sharing that moment of silence or that moment of thinking. It's perhaps a Zen-like experience, you could say.
Yeah, there are many sirens in rough cut.
I'll just have to excuse myself and say that I'm not a religious person. I'm not a guru. I'm a light Buddhism, I guess, a Buddhist, a very local Japanese Buddhist. I'm a very typical Japanese Buddhist, light one, I guess. Oh, right, I remember now. I think maybe I talked to you about this, Philip. every time I invited filmmaker, I often tell them that if the audience says nothing, I'm not going to say anything either. So I tell the filmmakers, if there's silence, I'm going to leave it silent. Let's just enjoy the 2 hours of silence if nobody says anything. But we discover that people are actually not so tolerant to silence. They can't stop themselves from speaking up in moments of silence.
So in the room, everyone's like wishing others to speak out, and of course the directors, the filmmakers too. They want to listen to the audience as soon as they finish the screening, but still they need to. They don't even show up to the audience. We don't let them to show up to the audience, so they have to keep silent with the audience. And that's kind of maybe like a torture for them, but it's not the bad experience for everyone. Yeah, I remember that.
I don't
know if I explained this before, but in this program, we make sure that the director doesn't come up front. Usually this kind of session, you have the director come up front and talk about the film, etc. But in our program, we don't do that. We let the filmmaker sit among the audience, and whenever he or she wants to speak, they will raise their hand and speak. But if they don't want to speak, they could just sit there and be silent. But that I've noticed that it's kind of hard for the filmmakers to be there, but it's like, they're really so happy and say thank you to whoever speaks or who voices their opinion on the footage. Yeah, we feel like that too, and I think the filmmaker feels like that too. And the audience probably feels happy when the director hesitantly raises his hand and says, "Oh, I'm the director." Maybe the audience is also kind of relieved for a moment when they find out who the director is. So that's what kind of happens during the session.
And then each time when we proceed the edition, we had to change some formats in how we present our program. In 2017, we did that like that, but in 2019, we stopped doing the graphic sharing documentation, and then instead we used worksheet and to let the audience jot down their own ideas in the sheet. We're not really like asking them to share the sheet to anyone, but we handed all the sheets for each audience for themselves. And then we showed 15-minute footage. We did the dialogue session for like 40 minutes or so. And then we screened the footage again. So in the 2019 edition, the 4th edition, we screened the same footage twice. That was kind of experiment for us. Could you talk more about that, Sakai-san?
It was kind of an experimental way of doing things, but it kind of bore fruit. I think that seeing the footage for the second time after discussion made the footage look very different. And that was a kind of interesting feedback for us. I mean, the footage itself has not changed a minute, but through the course of experience of talking about that footage, it proved that dialogue conversation can be a very productive adding value to our experience. And it seems as you might be surprised that it happens, but it actually happens in front of our eyes. And this format made it happen, made it work. Initially, we were not sure that would work, but having done it and having talked to the audience afterwards, the participants, we realized and we understood that that's what happened.
そういうことが起きたんだなってことは後から分かった。
Yeah, it was a combination between this rough cuts idea and the two twice screening format. And it was kind of interesting experiment. And afterwards, I heard some participants asking me, "Can we use this kind of format in their workshop?" But of course, it's not us, or we don't have any copyright, so everyone could do the same. But yeah, it really goes well with the rough cut concept. Yeah. And we moved on in 2021 to do the same. We showed twice the same footage. And
even online format.
yes, this 2021 was it's a hard year for all the film festivals we know, but we also had to make a huge decision whether to go on with our 5th edition of Rough Cut or not. And I was talking with Sakai-san and Hama-san that if we cannot maintain the Rough Cut concept through online edition, then we shouldn't do that. I mean, but if we could do something that we can do online, maintaining the concept that we have been talking, then it might be quite an interesting experience for everyone. So we should do it, and we talk a lot, and then we decide to do it. And another thing was that those filmmakers that's been participating is little by little recognizing our program, the Yamagata Rough Cut itself. So we thought we shouldn't stop our edition in 4th edition. We should go and keep on going as much as we could in any kind of formats. And so like this discussion or dialogue, we imagine is effective when you talk in person, we believe. But maybe if we can go on the Zoom webinar format, then it's gonna be nice. So that's why we decided to do it. And in this, could you explain some about that, Sakai-san?
Yes, to do it online, to have a conversation, a dialogue like this online, this is happening a lot these days. And we had to face that reality. It was a rough cut program itself, but also the film festival overall had to deal with this issue. In rough cut program, it was very important to be in this space, to feel what was the other people were feeling within the same space. And so we were not sure whether it would work online. But there was something that I was believing in, which was, in my personal experience, having done the 3 films, I mean, the method that we used for Storytellers and the trilogy, the idea was to look at the camera as you speak. I mean, to have 2 people talking to each other, but we would shift the camera so that every person who was talking would be talking directly straight on to the camera. And so in the imagination of the audience, you would feel as if you are conversing with that person. You know, this is very similar to what we are seeing on Zoom. We are all looking at the camera, but we sense as if we are talking to each other. In fact, I'm just talking to my computer screen, but I don't see you, in fact, physically. But that act is really training our imagination to think about ourselves. There's a strange space, virtual space that emerges, and sometimes it's easier to talk like this than to talk to somebody who's sharing the same physical space with you. And that's something that the people that we interviewed in our films told us. They said that, you know, having the chairs shifted so that people are not facing each other directly face on, they said that it's easier for them to
この
talk
人たち
than
の
else
想像力次第では全然
otherwise.
あり得るんだなっていうことは
So we
あった
thought
の
that
で、
the online
これは
version
ぜひ、
perhaps
まあ、
would
そういうこ
work.
ともあるから、
And
ぜ
so
ひ
we
やってみ
tried
よう
it.
ということで、やったんですが、
But
その
of
でも
course, it
本
has
当
to
に
do, I mean, it depends on
こ
the
れは本
people
当に
who
来る人
gather
次第
there
という
for
か、
that
その
session.
喋る人次第とい
And
うところ
so
が
we
ある中
limited
でやっ
the
た
number
中
of
で、
people who would
こ
join
れを本当に
and
もう
also made
本当
sure
に人数
that
も本当
the
に限定さ
conversation
せ
will
て
be
もらって、
private
ファン公開ではない場所
and
で、
that
これ
the
をこ
talk
の
will
中
not
だけしか
be
聞かないからね
open
っ
to
てい
the
うような
public.
状況を本当に作りながら、もう本当に気を使いながら
And
こうやっ
as a
てみたら
result, I think that we came up
まあ
with
非
a
常に
very
すご
nice
く
special
あの
virtual space.
まあとて
The
もいい場所に
audience,
なった
I
という
mean, the
か、あ
filmmakers
の監
spoke
督もすごく
very
ここに対して
thoughtfully
自制的な
and were able to
言
ask
葉だったり
questions
とか、
to every single participant.
集まってくれた
And
メン
every
バーに対して
participant
一人
was
一人
also
に対
able
して
to
何か
speak very
聞きたいこと
personally.
を言ったりとか、
They would talk about
そ
their
の
own
来た人たちが本
experiences
当に自分
or,
の個人的なこ
I
と
mean, they
の
were
中から
watching,
この
you know,
体験の
footage
中に
from
引き
a
寄せ
very
て、
far away
なんかそ
land,
の
but
海外の
they were able to
全然
bring
知らない
that
ところの映画を見
close
た
to
りとか
them.
っていうことを
And
言葉
that
にしてくれ
is
たり
what
みたいな
happens
こと
on
が
the
すること
web.
は、ウェブの中で
We
とても多くて、
feel
まあ
as
もしく
if
は
we
こうい
have
う人
met
に突然会え
somebody
ないような状況
on
の
this
中で、
virtual space,
このま
and
る
we are
で
able to
すごく
encounter
出会え
some
たかの
kind
よう
of
な言葉をこう出し合ったりみたいな
synchronized
瞬間があって、
physical
まあと
space.
てもいい場所だったん
And
じゃないかと
after
振
having
り返る
seen
と
seeing
思いま
seeing
した。
the
で、
footage, we
もう
or
本当にその後
after the film, we can come
映画を見た
together
後、
and
その
have
もう
a
一回
drinking
この Zoom
party,
で集まって
reuniting
何かをやっ
together
たり
and
とかですね、そういう
reuniting.
こ
It's
と
like
も何
sort
か
of like
自
a
然に
Yamagata
できて、
experience, you know, or
これ
Mm.
山
a
形
feeling
に
of
来ては
longing
ないん
for
ですけど、
Yamagata. That is
何か
because it's
山
what we
形に
do in
また行きたい
Yamagata
な
from
と
that level.
思わせてくれるような場になったん
So
じゃないか
under
な
the
と。
conditions, I
で、
think that
それはすごく
this was
こういう状況の
exactly
中
what
で
we
得
were
られる
looking
ものとして
for
は、すごくとても
when we had to use these tools.
欲しいものだったなと思いました。こういうの。
We
やっぱりこ
often
ういう中で使わなきゃいけない。
forget to use our
どうしても
imagination.
対
It's
面で
like,
忘
you
れ
know,
て
using the muscles that
対
we
面してる
usually
から
don't
使わ
use
な
in
く
our
なってし
daily
まう
life.
ような
But
想像力。
if
まあ普段使ってない
this
筋肉のようなものを
uh,
使うことになるんですけど、これは
online
もし
time
これ
is
こういう
over
よう
and
な
we
状況が
get
な
to
く
meet
なっ
each
て
other
対
in
面した後
physically,
に
I do
実は
hope
必要
that
なもんだ
we
ったな
don't,
と
you know, lose
思
those
わされる
muscles
ような
anymore. I mean, again,
回だったな
and
と
continue using
思
our
いましたけど。
imagination in the way we discovered here online.
Experiencing the fourth session, we did it in 2 days. And every night we were having an after the gathering party, small gathering party online. The fourth session, I still remember that I really felt that it was very we finished in success. When I met the moment that I think it was just before we screened the second the footage and the dialogue continued like 40 minutes and we knew that the event was almost going to be over. So usually people go on like I want to speak out, but in the fourth session that we experienced that the silence came again, and the silence that we could feel like everyone is thinking something in their mind. So that silence was kind of like we were familiar with that. This rough cut silence, maybe I could say, and I didn't expect that's gonna happen online. And when in the moment that I felt like, oh, this is a rough cut silence, I thought that we can do it online, and we succeeded in this edition. And that was a pretty happy moment for me. Yeah.
It just struck me that rough cut is very Japanese because it's like Rashomon, you know, that every point of view is plausible and legitimate. And it's like you can see the same thing and yet have so many different points of view. Yeah, it's very unique.
That's why it's very difficult to explain. If you just give me only 5 minutes, it's very difficult for us to explain. But if we explain our program for like about an hour, maybe we can explain a little more. You, Philip. Yeah. And thank you for helping us to speak, yeah, and explain.
Right.
大丈夫だ。本当に分かってもらえたのか、より分からなくなっ
I really don't know if people have understood rough cut from this. Maybe they're just more puzzled after hearing this.
Well, I mean, remember we were talking about how film is sound and vision, and that over the decades, everyone just talks about the vision, the looking at film, but well, people have stopped listening to film. I think Rough Cut is reminding you again that that sound element to film, you know, you have to listen. And I'm just amazed that Ko Sakai, who is a self-described light Buddhist Japanese person, but actually what you do have to me is like a background in social work, group therapy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I received
So
those essence, and yeah, I almost sharing with my local neighbors. And yeah, and it makes sense. So yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
It's as if, you know, I was still so anxious and worried before doing it, but after doing it, it's as if my anxiety is gone. I'm originally a filmmaker, but through, it's as if every 2 years I get to check to see what I've been doing as a filmmaker. I mean, it's sort of like a therapy. I don't know if therapy is the right word, but maybe it is a therapy for me, therapeutic process, experience for me.
Yeah, this is a program that gives you back your life. Yeah, life outside of film, you know.
And it pretty goes well with young filmmakers. When we talk about these ideas to young filmmakers, then they really like understands like in a minute. And then they were always like, I feel like many filmmakers need this kind of moment, like sharing their footage and talk about that with those people who they don't know and share their ideas. Yeah. So yeah, we hope that we could continue, and maybe in those Buddhism film festival all over the world. Yeah. Starting with.
Yeah, you should start.
Of course, that's a joke, but anyway, for the filmmaker, I think it's an important experience, but it's also important for the audience, or I do hope that for the participants, it makes some sense. It's a very special environment that we are in today, these days, and we have become very passive or receptive and less active about our information. And this experience will help us stand still and start conversing, or starting conversations and reevaluate how we deal with media. So a place like a Rough Cut program, or allowing your footage to be shown, allowing my footage to be shown in a similar kind of Rough Cut situation would be something beneficial for me too, I think.
Yeah, and the Storytellers is still is on streaming online in Made in Japan program until 6th of February, I think. So please enjoy.
Yes, please.
Thank you for that.
Yeah, from the program, and also I like to mention a memorial episode of YIDFF 1991. The film Living on the River Agano, Philip also mentioned. the film came also included Made in Japan Yamagata 1989. Then the director of this film, Sato Makoto, and the film crew visited Yamagata at the first time edition of Yamagata International Documentary Film Festival in 1989. And then they back to Yamagata again, 91. And they showed a very lush version of the film. And then they had much discussion and debate with audience, and including filmmakers, festival staff, the local audience. I wasn't be there, but I heard it was like from the morning until midnight. And that was a different style and format of Yamagata Rough Cut, but we felt kind of similar sense of dialogue, importance of dialogue.
I feel like in that days, not now, we feel when we hear Sato Makoto, then he's very famous, and we all know those, the filmmakers know the name. But in 1991, he was a newcomer. It was no one knew that he was a talented director or not. And so the festival picked him up and then screened the rough cut. And then later on, he completed and came back to the festival. So I feel like it's the very, very, very similar things happening in our program.
でも本当に阿賀に生きるの話を聞いたときに、
When I heard of the story about the Agano film, well, I heard the legend later, afterwards, after we had started this activities. But I feel that perhaps all of this came from the land of Yamagata. I mean, some strengths that the land has that draws these things to happen, that the people, the local people will open up this place to young people who are still in the rough. You know, the film festival has to open a place up for these people, or offer a place to unpolished talent, for local people to listen to the voices of young people and emerging voices. I think that that has to do with the emergence of the Rough Cut program within the borders of this film festival. And I didn't actually, I mean, so initially I didn't know that that legendary film, Living on the River Agano, went through such an experience of being criticized by the audience, absolutely, and then going through that and coming back to the festival as a finished film. But I do think that when we bring in Asian filmmakers, it's a pleasure to have Philip join us. For Philip to be among us gives us confidence to do what we try out the ideas that we have. You're not necessarily just an advisor, but my question is, Philip, do you have any advice for us, or some kind of comment that you'd like to give us for the future?
I think that as long as life is moving so fast, there's a place for rough cuts. It's really as simple as that, because everything is just moving so too damn fast. That's why you have all these counter movements, like mindful eating, slow food, meditation. We're all trying to just hold on to the experience of life, in its essence, and it's so difficult to do that. So providing this rough cut experience is very important. I think everyone who has been through it, they are very thankful.
Yeah, and I think it's especially important for filmmakers nowadays. They can think, or they can go on to the internet and get lots of tons of information and knowledge very quickly, but sometimes we really easily lose very simple sense, the important sense, while we're proceeding our project. Not only the audience, but I really expect many filmmakers to attend the Rough Cut program in the future. Yeah.
Actually, it goes back to what Ko Sakai was saying about 2011, after that whole catastrophe, and that whole experience of trying to go back to listen to people who who knew what was there before, and because as someone who didn't live there and who didn't experience those things there, he had to naturally just listen. So I suppose in the same way, when you do rough cuts with a lot of Asian filmmakers, you don't live in those parts of Asia, but you need someone to tell you, what was there or what is there.
That's true.
Yeah, that already happened in the 2021 edition. Like we didn't know, none of us in Japan had experienced something happen in India or the Philippines, and yeah, we were learning many things, this historical stuff, the cultural stuff, and that was not only just like experiencing or observing the footage, but like it's more like experiencing some part of the world and sharing that at the same time. And especially because we cannot travel there easily now, that was the experience online was really more strongly received to the audience. I felt, yeah. And maybe, yeah, as Philip-san said, as the world goes fast, and then the COVID spread everywhere, the rough cuts has a role to do in every part of the world, maybe, yeah.
As filmmakers, including me, it's kind of an courageous. I mean, it gives these words give us courage. The film or the footage that exists is welcomed by the world. I mean, the world has gone this way, but nevertheless, the act of showing your film has meaning, is the message that we receive. And that was a sense of confidence that you gave me, a sense of courage that you gave me. And that we want to tell the filmmakers that it's all right to show us the rough cuts that you're making today in this world.
And also we hope Philip having again in Yamagata.
I need
Right?
curry.
Anytime. Secret recipe curry.
Why not? Why not? Yeah.
Whose
Yeah.
recipe do you want to know next time?
Yeah, the Shinsuke Ogawa curry was it was mutton curry. I remember. Yeah. No one remembers. Yeah, we need
You
to start
remember?
from that. Yeah, I remember. Yeah.
We declare that the spirit of the independent Asian documentary filmmakers is alive, and one day it will soar with the wind.